Bonjour, bonsoir. My dear friends, welcome to JCB Live. Tonight, this happy hour is going to be with a great friend. She's so charismatic that if you don't know her yet, you're going to be hypnotized by her charm and her knowledge. She's an absolutely fabulous lady that I've been friends with for many, many years. I'm almost afraid to say a decade. We've done so much together. She's a writer, a journalist, a phenomenal sommelier, and very knowledgeable in the restaurant world and all that is beverage, as long as there's alcohol in it. Her name is very famous. You can hear her smile because she's written many, many books. Some you have and some yet you don't have. But one of the book I'm very proud of is the one we've done together. Before we tell you everything more, the bubbles we know make her come and appear like magic on the screen. Her name is Marnie Old. Woohoo!
Woohoo! Thank you for that introduction, Jean-Charles. And I should have waited to pour my glass so that we could mime you pouring through the camera for me.
Well, ladies first. Marnie, this is so fun to be together, of course, not just by writing or doing videos, but doing this discussion on a topic that I'm so proud of. And that's the topic we work very hard together on. And for some of you, dear friends, first we need to have not only the toast, but maybe to our next book, Marnie, yes. Right in the eye.
Well, I wouldn't want any of the consequences.
And we'll let Marnie describe the wine because she's the expert. But what I'm excited about, though, is Marnie as well run the entire, phenomenal ambassador program, educational. Her title is, Marnie?
I am the director of Vinlightenment, which I think just sounds so much more fun than wine education.
And she makes it fun and exciting. So all the things you see, which are so vibrant and energizing and unique with ambassador programs and this amazing program that brings wines to people home and educate them from a home perspective, is really boosted with the energy and the talent of Marnie. So, dear friends, as Marnie will present something very special that really brought us together several years ago, is how to categorize wine really by how they taste. And this was a very important commitment for all of us, is to say, how can we present wine to everyone around the world that they would relate to it, identify themselves with the wine, and learn from it in a very simple and easy way. So from one idea, which was only one chapter, we ended up together creating this beautiful book, Passion for Wine. And, we call it the French ideal and the American dream, because this has been really one of the most exciting collaboration I personally have done. Because one, dear friends, you may think I know everything about wine, but this is absolutely not true. You learn all the time about wine. And thanks to Marnie, who's very good with visual aids, she created so many great visuals in the book that allows you to really understand wine, as you could see, through so many different ways, that makes you discover the world of wine in a few pages and become an aspiring expert. So, Marnie, I think now is the time, maybe first to tell us what you think about the bubbles, because
absolutely.
This is
I am such a fan. This is the LVE, and this is the newest addition to the line that you've worked on with John Legend. LVE, of course, stands for Legend Vineyard Exclusive, and also symbolizes the power of love, of course. Now, originally, the first wines released as LVE were a Cabernet Sauvignon and a Chardonnay that were both made in Napa Valley at Raymond Vineyards. And I can only imagine, Jean-Charles, how much fun that must have been to sit down with Stephanie Putnam and John Legend and craft those wines for the first time. But recently, we have been finding such incredible success with these that there's demand for a wider range of styles. And you guys started branching out into French wines too, like this one.
Absolutely. And what is so exciting, Marnie, is our friendship with John had developed from Napa Valley beyond the boundaries of the United States to France, because John and Chrissy adore the south of France. They love what the south of France and French sparkling have to offer. So they said, it's part of our life already. We might as well make it as a wine together. So that's what happened.
Well, and this is absolutely gorgeous. The first rosé to come out was a still rosé in that classic Provence style that you're talking about, that familiar dry style of rosé that really cannot be captured by rosé made anywhere else on planet Earth. In the south of France, they've been making dry rosés for so long that it's just a specialty. It's designed to go with the seafoods and the sunshine, of course, that you have every day in the south of France. What I love about this wine is that it manages to capture that spirit, that sensibility, the preferences, like just popping the cork and pouring a glass conjures the sunshine of Provence. But it is not a classic Provence style. It is a sparkling wine that itself has a greater softness to it, a lacy froth. It's very delicate, but it's absolutely ideal as a crossover from day into night. This is an occasion wine, something to pop open, and when you're socializing, whether you're having people over just for some hors d'oeuvres, or maybe you've been building a cheese and charcuterie board, whatever the case, this sparkling wine from the south of France is absolutely perfect. I'm a big fan, Jean-Charles. It's not quite as concentrated in its length, not quite as dry either as the wildly popular JCB 69. So when I'm talking to somebody who wants a lighter, softer, sort of like a dry French answer to Prosecco, this is what I recommend.
That's right. Well, fabulous way to put it, the dry French version of Prosecco. And what I love with John before he starts to perform or just around the pool, and as you said so well, among a reception, this is a perfect wine to serve because it's very light and ethereal and magically harmonious among all the grapes captured into this wine. So I'm glad you love it. So now, Marnie, chapter 4 of the book is one of my favorite. And I got to say, to all our friends with us today that have not seen the book, this is really the magic of Marnie. And my dream, as you know, why do I say my dream? I've had the pleasure to make wine all my life. And to be around wine and to listen to people describe wine and finding that it's a language on its own sometimes. Sometimes you have to learn a language as you would a foreign language and get into it and know it so well that you speak among yourself. So the idea of this spectrum is to give you, to all of you, what Marnie is going to give us now. So we're up to a treat. We've never done that together as a live, but we thought, what a better time in mid-February as we are now to showcase in 2021 a very simple way to taste wine and to classify wine into 5 key categories. And those I'll introduce, and then Marnie will take it from there. Vivacious, voluptuous, elegant, sensuous, and powerful. And for all of you who know me well, you know I don't describe wine as technically as much as through those great words.
Well, and do you remember, Jean-Charles, how this project first began? I mean, we've, of course, now explored the spectrum of style, first by publishing it in the book, in Passion for Wine. But the original germ of the idea began when you were preparing luxury boutiques for markets globally that had less familiarity with grapes and regions. I'm thinking particularly of those in Asia, where this idea of providing a way to navigate wine by color, by taste, by how the wines share similarities of flavor and of their affinity with food. This was the need that you and I first collaborated on. And you're right, it's too many years now back for us to count politely. But we had such fun on that project. It eventually developed into that book that you and I each have here, Passion for Wine. We've recently republished it with a new cover, partly because my hair is so different now. It was very short at that time, if you recall, Jean-Charles, and has gotten quite a bit longer now. But we have a new cover buying the current edition. In any case, though, this is such a fascinating idea because the way I come into the world of wine, I'm kind of an explainer. I'm like the Sesame Street of alcohol. I'm here to explain the basics of what is otherwise a kind of complex and confusing category to shop for. So if you don't mind, Jean-Charles, I'm going to go ahead, since it's hard to show the pages of the book, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so people can see the graphics properly, if that's all right.
Wonderful idea. Thank you. I'm excited.
Okay,
too.
Well, and we added a few new graphics you haven't seen before, so that should be very interesting too. And one moment, there it is. I minimized my screen, so now I just need to try that.
As you're going to see those pages, we will eventually post them so you could use them as well. And I think it's important that you feel wine is a phenomenal, exciting pleasure. It's not to be meant a very complex, language that isolate anyone. On the opposite, wine brings all of us together. That's the idea. And this is a guideline for you to understand better your palate, your senses, what you like, and maybe you don't like as much. And use this path to describe wine, because this is the easiest way to get into the world of that gift of God, that gift of pleasure that is wine.
Well, and the spectrum of style, the amount of positive feedback I've gotten about this product through the entire world is just amazing because it's so simple and so easy to understand. You see, we created this spectrum of style to help make sense of wine for people who find it a little remote, a little confusing. And of course, this was for this book, Passion for Wine, which we subtitled The French Ideal and the American Dream, because it was the French who first created fine wines, but we are now perfecting them all around the world and in places like the United States, where we are beginning to rival, of course, and sometimes exceed the quality that we find in France. Although that's a controversial topic for us to discuss another time, Jean-Charles. But instead of using traditional grapes and regional appellations, the information that normally shows up on wine labels, those make wine very hard to navigate, because if you haven't done a lot of study and homework to learn all the names of the regions around the world, or to get to know the primary grape varieties and the flavors that are associated with each one of them, especially since they shift from region to region, we chose to do something different. Our spectrum sorts wines into 5 categories of flavor based on how they taste and how they pair with food, which is even in some ways more important than the flavor in the moment in the mouth. And that is partly because our spectrum largely reflects traits that are driven by the degree of grape ripeness at harvest. And this is something that every wine professional in the world, every sommelier, every winemaker, every vintner, every sales representative has already had some passing familiarity with this idea that grape ripeness is what drives whether a wine is lighter and more refreshing, or richer and more mouthfilling. But this concept is very rarely explained to wine drinkers themselves. So our purpose with the spectrum of style was to share this incredibly clarifying concept that once you understand this piece of how the wine world works, everything else starts to fall into place. And that was our entire purpose with the spectrum of style. But we also factor in traits that are controlled more by winemaking methods and cultural sensibilities. And whoops, it appears that my image somehow got accidentally deleted here. My apologies. But that is the underlying concept behind Boisset Collection's spectrum of style, which goes through those 5 categories that Jean-Charles introduced to us: vivacious, voluptuous, elegant, sensuous, and powerful. And we chose in the book to have fun with it, to do this in a way that people could really relate to. We went back to the golden age of Hollywood in the 1950s and used famous actresses from that period, icons of style, to channel the wine's personality in each one of these 5 categories. So for vivacious, we chose to illustrate this category with Doris Day, with voluptuous, Marilyn Monroe, elegant, Audrey Hepburn, sensuous, Eartha Kitt, and powerful, Elizabeth Taylor. So let's talk a little bit more and explore that spectrum of style. These 5 categories can be used to classify all of the wines that we offer through the Boisset collection into one of these personality categories, each of one of which has a different suitability for different types of foods, different kinds of occasions, different times of day, and of course, different temperament and moods as well. So within this list, vivacious and voluptuous are categories that encompass our sparkling white and rosé wines. Essentially, if a wine is served chilled, it's going to be one of our vivacious or voluptuous wines.
Like the one we're having now.
Yes, exactly. The Vivacious Sparkling Rosé from LVE is a vivacious wine. It fits right into that category. Whereas with reds, elegant, sensuous, and powerful are the terms and the categories that we used for reds. So wines like this one taste as vivacious as Doris Day, as I mentioned, and that means flavors that are lighter, brighter, more acidic, certainly, but also a little leafier and greener with a little bit more of that herbal accent, sometimes a floral accent that we find in fresher fruit at earlier stages of ripeness. These are thirst-quenching, invigorating wines. They are vibrant, lightweight, and refreshing. They're almost always unoaked, or if they have been aged in barrels, those barrels were neutral, having completely shed the toasty, spicy flavor that's associated with new oak by the time they're used to mature a vivacious wine. Generally speaking, there are 3 primary categories of wines that fall under the vivacious classification in the Boisset spectrum of style. All of our sparkling wines, including this amazing rosé, are classified as vivacious because in order to be sparkling, wines are by definition harvested at low ripeness. They're never made to any higher alcoholic strength than 12.5%, and they are almost always unoaked as well, which places them directly into this category that's designed to be a daytime crossover into night, aperitif style wine that's designed to pique the appetite and quench thirst on a hot day. The other 2 categories that do fall under vivacious are all of our rosé wines and all of our unoaked white wines. So that could be Sauvignon Blanc from Napa Valley, that could include Chablis from northern France. All of those would be considered vivacious under our classification system because they're uniformly higher than average in acidity and lower than average in alcohol, which are the qualities that make wine seem lightweight and refreshing. It's also amazingly food friendly. When you try vivacious wines, you can be tempted to pigeonhole them with salads or sushi or ceviche, but they end up, if you actually give them a chance, being better partners for things like grilled tuna or baked lasagna or a grilled steak than you might ever have suspected. And that's in part because high acidity, low alcohol, and low oak flavors allow these wines to act almost like a squeeze of lemon, perking up the flavors on the plate without overwhelming them. And that's exactly what we have in this wine, the LVE Sparkling Rosé, which of course is inspired by the power of love. And vivacious wines can make any night a special occasion. Luckily, all you need is 2 glasses and to pop a cork to really enjoy something like this, as Jean-Charles is, of course, the absolute expert on that.
Thank you. Well,
now, there are other wines in our LVE line that are of other categories, though. The Chardonnay would be voluptuous, right, Jean-Charles? I'm sorry, I think I spoke over you there.
No, I was saying I love your food suggestions as well, Marnie. Thank you for doing that. And this is something we may want to add sometimes to it because you really describe the food component so well with sparkling. Often, a lot of our friends as well may not know how to pair sparklings, and you showcased a wide range of different flavor profiles that allows food and sparkling to shine, because it could be intimidating sometimes too, to bring sparkling to a dish or to a course or to just even little amuse-bouche. So you said it very well.
Well, thank you. And that LVE line that you crafted with John Legend is just so incredibly diverse. It covers every stage of the meal that I, as a sommelier, would be pairing wines to. And that, of course, is where the spectrum of style first began. To me, vivacious wines are the aperitif wines you would serve before the first course. The voluptuous whites come out with our first seafood course to grace the more delicate flavors that we have from the sea than from the land. And this is where we're landing with voluptuous wines. The next category tastes as voluptuous as Marilyn Monroe. And that's in part because voluptuous wine flavors are richer and juicier and less acidic than those of our vivacious wines. This is because we allow those grapes to hang longer on the vine or grow them in warmer climates. Either way, those grapes will acquire more richness, more concentration, develop more flavor in their skins, and produce richer, more luscious wines. And when you find those kinds of flavors in grapes, what do winemakers do? They tend far more often to ferment those types of white wines in barrels, because that environment that allows the wine to breathe allows those intense, rich wines to concentrate even further and to acquire a toasty, nutty, almost caramelized quality that we find in wines that have been barrel fermented, but is many times more familiar to people in baked desserts. It's like the difference between vivacious and voluptuous is like going from a freshly sliced Granny Smith apple with the vivacious to a baked apple pie with the voluptuous wine. And this is true regardless of the grape variety that is used to make it. So often people associate this voluptuous style with Chardonnay, for example, Jean-Charles, because Chardonnay wines, when they say Chardonnay on the label, tend to be barrel fermented, tend to be quite rich, tend to give us those oaky flavors. And yet some of the very finest vivacious wines in our portfolio are 100% Chardonnay. They're just harvested earlier to give a very different flavor profile. And that, at the end of the day, is what gives them a different ability to partner with different types of foods. The voluptuous wines are lush, rich, and decadent. Caramelized flavors and toastiness from oak is what really gives these the ability to work better with foods that have been cooked. So we were talking earlier about how vivacious has a natural affinity with raw foods like salads, sushi, ceviche. Voluptuous is what I pull out of the refrigerator when we're talking about seafood that has been caramelized by the use of heat in cooking, sauteed in butter on the stove, wrapped in bacon and roasted in the oven, or, of course, thrown on a grill or given the treatment of smoking. All of those things add that nutty, toasty, caramelized, oaky flavor to the wine that echoes and beautifully harmonizes with those flavors that are brought out by the cooking process in foods. And this is not something that needs to be limited to fish. We can go well beyond the realm of seafood with these whites. They can handle poultry, white meats like pork. They can even do a gorgeous steak, as long as you keep the sauce on the milder side. A steak au jus with a beautiful voluptuous Chardonnay is absolutely perfect, as you well know, Jean-Charles. And that has to do with the fact that their lower acidity, higher alcohol, and higher presence of oak flavor are what are going to really help that meat flavor shine. It's only if you start doing things like a black pepper crust or a blue cheese butter that you really have to start pulling out a red wine for your steak. Isn't that right?
That's totally right. And Marnie, I want to introduce, as you take a sip, the other mini book we've created, which is more of a companion tasting journal. And I absolutely love page 10. And why do I love page 10? It's 2 tiny pages. As you can see, it's mini me. And it's all about cracking the wine code. And what Marnie just said in a very eloquent way, Marnie did a slide, which I just want to summarize to all of you as we tasted the white wines here. The Burgundy Chardonnay descriptors. She said direct taste, so white, tart, unoaked, lightweight. And the indirect one, which is what she just described, Strogold, green apple, mineral, vivacious. So within a very simple page, as you can see on that side, this is really helping you to define a very easy metamorphoric way to understand wine. And I think that's very important. This is why we've done this little guide, which is so cool, because it allows you then to take your notes blank with the guidance and still write the name of your wine, your personal extraction, your objective, and the spectrum of style categories. So I really want to insist on all of you getting this little companion book in addition to the book. And I'm not here to tell you you must, but it would be a very important tool for you to have to really develop systematic way of looking at wine and making you feel comfortable about it, making you feel secure about your choices and your own flavor, and finally allow you to impress the crowd, because when you approach it that way, you basically categorize it in a very precise way. So it's a fun way, simple way, and very easy way for you to get within the world and the skins of wine and get it. So Marnie, I wanted to point our little guide, which I'm a big fan of.
Course, and that does make it so much more interactive and immersive. And really, the act of writing down your wine experiences, the reason we created this Passion for Wine tasting journal was because this is what helps embed the wine into your memory. So you can keep it in those memory banks and refer to it later to compare to new wine experiences. It's what helps you orient yourself within the world of wine. So I am going to go back and we are going to talk briefly about red wine this time, and I am going to move fairly quickly since I know that we have been, having so much fun here. It's hard to decide where to stop, but I want to talk about each of the three categories of red and then drill down into the one that we're tasting today. So within reds, the elegant wines that taste as sophisticated and timeless as Audrey Hepburn are the ones that are our driest and most traditional of our reds, that are made with the lowest ripeness level in their grapes, usually because they come from cooler climates, and they are called elegant. They feature bright, tart, red berry flavor ranges, often with earthy or herbal aromatics, and they tend to be very French influenced in the sense that they are very food oriented, meaning the wine is not designed to show its best foot forward on first sip. It's designed to be accompanied by salty or rich flavors in the foods, and to be a food partner, to bridge between the food and the wine, where somehow the two together taste better together than either did apart. This is very much a French and particularly a Burgundian approach to winemaking that's very sophisticated and classic, which is why we call these wines elegant. They're very traditional, earthy, and complex. Stylistically, on a sensory level, they're high in acidity, also high in earthy flavor, but they do tend to have lower oak flavor than some other reds. And they encompass pretty much all of the French wines that we make, from Burgundy, from the south of France, and so on, but also many of our more French-influenced wines from California, especially Russian River Valley and cool climates there that grow Pinot Noir that is more French in style in many ways than Californian. Now, the next category that we make is called sensuous, and these are the softest, most modern of our reds that are made with the ripest grapes. And these wines are as sensuous, luscious, and sublime as Eartha Kitt herself in her prime. Pre-Catwoman, let me tell you, this image really does channel her spirit. Sensuous wines are wines that have flavors that are fruity and jammy, usually though in the black fruit range, more like black cherry than red cherry, more like blackberry than raspberry. And usually our sensuous wines are in this tier with softer tannin and lower acidity than many of our other darker, riper wines. These wines are mid-weight, smooth, modern, very hedonistic in the sense that they are not designed for you to have to wait and enjoy them with food. They are designed to be absolutely enjoyed in the moment, on first impression. These are wines to really live in that moment. They are juicy, soft, and lip-smacking when compared to our more elegant styles. They are lower in acidity, certainly, than those wines, and much higher in their fruitiness of flavor, but they also have a softness in tannin, a velvety texture that you'll find in all sorts of wines, not just our richer, riper Pinot Noirs, but also some of our red blends, our Merlots, our Zinfandels, and even some of our softer Cabernet Sauvignons fall into this category as well, including the wine that you have in your glass there, Jean-Charles, the red LVE blend. Now, this is a Napa Valley blend that was the third wine in the Legend Vineyard exclusive line. I am absolutely a huge fan of this wine. It is dominated primarily by Merlot and Petit Syrah, although the proportions do change from vintage to vintage. And what I love about sensuous reds like this one is that because you don't need food to enjoy them, this is the wine to pull the cork on when you get home after work, after a long day or a long commute. Kick off your shoes, pull a cork, and relax. That's exactly what sensuous wines are designed to do.
Happened. My shoes are off. And, you know, of course, they give you a great sense of love.
Oh, well, if that's, you know, I do see this fairly often, Jean-Charles. Give me one moment. I want to tell people about that last category, and then I will come right back to you. So I'm just going to share one more time. One moment. We'll bring that back up. And sorry for that interruption. Here we go. Application window. There's the right. So the final category, which we are not tasting today, but does exist within the LVE line, are our bolder, more structured, often more expensive red wines that are made with the ripest grapes. And these are called powerful. So within the LVE line, the Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley, one of the original LVE wines, is in this powerful category that are as intense and as powerful and assertive as Elizabeth Taylor herself. These wines tend to feature dense, dark, blue-black flavors that are often higher in oak and spice than any of the other categories in our spectrum of style. So these wines are inky in color, mouth-filling in texture, concentrated in flavor. And when we say structured in the wine business, we mean that they have high levels of both tannin and acidity, the two antioxidant properties that preserve wine and help it resist oxidative decline, allowing the wines to improve over time in your cellar. These wines are dark, bold, and assertively oaked, and they tend to be made with thicker-skinned grape varieties, not just Cabernet Sauvignon, but also things like Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot, Zinfandel, and even some Merlots are in this category for us as well. And with that, I will stop the sharing, Jean-Charles, so that we can get back to enjoying our red wine.
Well, Marnie, this was really fabulous. And the way you describe it is so not only intriguing, but refreshing and liberating. What I mean by that is, you know, both of you are so much into the world of wine that sometimes we could, all of us, tend to forget about normal language and normal analogies and metaphors that allows us to understand simply wine. And wine, for having made wine for 45 years now, remember I'm 49, I started at 4 years old, is really exciting to be able to say to people, look at our spectrum of style and get a new way of looking at wine. And people really are endorsing it. So I'm so excited, and this was very helpful with John Legend, a very good friend John, when we actually crafted this wine. The way you described it, and I'm going to ask you to describe it one more time, is exactly the way he described it as his intention for us to assist him to craft and sculpt this melody in the glass. And the outcome is exactly right there. So describe it for us, Marnie, because I know absolutely. You did it, but do it again.
So the LVE Red Blend, as I mentioned, the original two wines were a Chardonnay and a Cabernet Sauvignon, and I can't help but imagine that John Legend must have wanted a softer, more everyday red that didn't need powerhouse flavors on the plate, and that was the motivation behind creating this incredible wine. So many red blends in California are quite popular, but many of them are a little disappointing in the quality of their fruit and in their texture, and this wine absolutely does not do that at all. What we have on the nose is a liqueur-like concentration of dark black fruits. If you think blackberry jam, black cherry pie, there's a richness there as well as layers of spice that come in through the use of high quality French oak aging. Stephanie Putnam at Raymond just did a masterful job with this blend in crafting a balance where the wine has some of the traits of powerful wines in terms of its color, in terms of its explosive flavors, but it softens on the palate and gives you a more delicate finish that allows you to enjoy this just sitting in front of the television or coming home after a long day at work without worrying too much about what you're eating. The wine is a pure hedonistic joy in the moment, and the finish is just so long. It's a shame. The sensuous category is often mistreated or exploited in the sense that the wines offer so much pleasure that I think sometimes winemakers feel they can get away with cutting corners on the quality of the fruit or on the aging in the barrels. And that's not what's happening here at all. The wine is designed, of course, to be friendly, generous, and soft on the palate with those qualities we described as being the sensuous traits. And yet it is so high in quality that you can feel the wine continuing to resonate on the palate for a good minute or two after you swallow, which is, of course, the hallmark every sommelier knows of high quality craftsmanship in the wine and a sign of impeccable fruit sources. I wouldn't expect anything less from Raymond Vineyards. And I know that that's part of what drew John Legend to us in terms of wanting to produce his first Napa Valley wines.
Well, Marnie, eloquently said and simply said too. Let's as well, dear friends, remember this is Napa Valley, appellation that is the top of the top that we really embody as a philosophy that we love, the energy, the lifestyle, and what Napa Valley brings. I want to thank as well John, because he's produced a few weeks ago an amazing message from the Napa Valley Vintners, as well as all the Association of Napa Valley. He's been with us, an enormous fundraiser for the fires and all the major events that have occurred here in Napa, and for the wine auction. So it's exciting as well to welcome Marnie Old, an old-time star, a legend in the wine world, and a young legend, of course, because her hair are still growing beautifully, as you could see. And we excited to tell you that this book has been a transformation. It's a very affordable book. You all need to have it in your library. I use it very often as a reference point, and I go back to it to refresh my memory and mind on some key points of whatever you want to learn about wine. This little companion is wonderful because you always need a tasting journal and a process. Don't forget, in any tasting Marnie and I do, we have a process. We follow, agile steps, easy steps, but there are steps to really understand wine from all the 5 senses that we have and more. So use this little journal, enjoy the sound of wine thanks to John Legend. And we will be back very soon, maybe next month, with Marnie for live, and as well, as many of you love, a more insightful educational session with our Director of Enlightenment and Vin Enlightenment. Not only enlightenment, but Vin Enlightenment, Marnie. So, Marnie, thank you again for being so great, so passionate. And thank you so much as well for making wine so accessible to everyone, to be understood, to be enjoyed, to be appreciated, and for themselves to understand their own tasting profile. So Marnie Old, dear friends, our usual guest on JCB Live.